You good?
Turn it on, hold it until the green light comes on. There you go.
Just don't point it when you tell her.
Like lightsabers. We good, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I guess let's do this.
There you go.
All right, let's call to order. This thing working or no? Let's call to order the San Carlos Estates Water Control District for Monday, June 27th. Roll call of officers: Ben Bogas, Jim Bradford, Jennifer Finazzo, Engineer Bill Morris, Attorney Richard Pringle, Secretary Treasurer Chris Lawson, and about 50 guests. Mr. Morris, let's start us off.
Actually, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
wait, 1 second here before. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to take one moment to thank the pastors that have graciously let us use this church tonight. And that's Pastor Riley in the back. Normally he stands up here, and I'm in the back where he's at. He's never let me have the mic before. So
40.
I have one on him now.
Oh, 50.
Thank you very much.
Definitely 50.
Mr. Morris.
The engineer's report for this evening will be very brief. Since the last board meeting, and allow me to apologize for my my absence last month. I had to take my turn with COVID. So the permits currently open in San Carlos Estates. There are 65 current access permits that are open. Since the last board meeting, we have closed 2 and had 3 new applications submitted. And there are no other activity to report at this particular time, so that concludes the engineer's report unless there are any specific questions.
Questions?
None.
Good.
Thank you.
Treasurer's report? Chris?
Oh, yeah.
You want the mic? The mic?
I need light.
Okay, everybody, you have the bills for this month's meeting, along with the collections for phase 1. We are now at 98.14% collected for phase 1. I've also provided you a copy of the unpaid assessments for the CIP to be a part of our later conversation this meeting. To show that we have about $11,840 as of the end of May unpaid for the assessment, and then we had $2,754 for 2020 and $725 for 2019. For the general maintenance, we're at 97.88% collected, and I do expect that we will see some additional revenues come in next month for the certificates that were issued and ultimately redeemed from looking at the website. If you look at your budget variance through June 22, I have actually provided you 2 forms. We're going to try and mimic the auditor's report going forward, so I wanted to start getting you familiar with that at the variance. But if we look at our annualized difference on our current budget, the drainage is about $16,000 under budget. Our roads are over budget right now on an annualized basis. The only other thing that is under budget is the legal. Administration's pretty flat. The auditor is over because we budgeted $12,000 and the contract came in at $13,000, but it's less than 10%. We are fully paid for our insurance now, so that actually is over budget. And don't ignore that number, that's not the right number. And the miscellaneous administration is over budget by $1,480. Engineering is over budget about 3% or $1,898. As far as our bank interest and our revenues, use of connection fees are Under budget 2,712, our other income, because of how we changed the method of reporting other income, is actually over budget 30%, 5,950, and our bank interest is over budget for the year. So the new format for the variance is incorporating more information than what we were previously reporting, which was really just the major expenses and incomes. This report's going to try and combine the collection reports that you have for both general maintenance and CIP, and it's all going to report it under one report.
Okay.
So hopefully, and we have some comments there, so hopefully this will be a better report going forward and more useful in looking at where we are and what we have left to pay and what we have left in the budget to spend.
More detail.
I think you've done a really good job.
So, other than that, is there any questions?
Not here.
Here.
Okay. You also have later in the packet the full complement of the May reports that we will approve later in the meeting.
That's it.
I think,
Oh, there's something else on there about the invoice?
yeah. Did
I
Brad,
saw him
is
looking.
Brad here?
Yes, he's back there.
Brad, you said you were going to drop that check off?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Attorney's report, Mr. Pringle?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have a number of comments. They are all related to your business agenda coming up later, so I'll save them until then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice job. Perfect. Comments from the guests and public? No comments?
Are we going to review the audited financials from September 2021? Just went on the website today.
Just the audit itself, or just?
Well, the auditor brings up issues regarding current year comments on things he recommends.
Yes. Some of those are, well, we talked about that last meeting, and a lot of those are being implemented.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
The audit report was presented at the last board meeting, and there are a number of items in the management comments that will be addressed with policies and things in the future. We're working on some of those now.
I can't speak for anybody else in this room, but this is the first time I've ever had a chance to come to a meeting because I just can't get here on the Tuesdays you guys have it. So I don't know if there's going to be this Monday. I'm definitely able to make it, and I'd like to see a little bit more transparency of what's going on with the board, because one of the first things they bring in this audit report is the website and the lack of links, and it's very difficult to navigate that website.
Excuse me. Can everybody hear him okay? If not, we'll provide him with a microphone.
Give him the mic, and he is. And I would
We
like
would just like to have the opportunity
Sure.
for everybody to hear.
And can
Mr.
we
Chairman,
have
yeah.
your name?
You get his name.
My name is John Salucci.
Just push the
And I want to
on
know
button and
your
hold it.
guys' name. I don't know you guys, and I think you should have introduced yourselves because not everybody here knows who you are and what you play on the board. I
Okay.
think that would be the first thing, that you can introduce yourself. I think there is new people here.
Okay. So what she said, my boss.
I don't know you guys.
So yeah, I think that is appropriate if there's a chance to have an introduction in the beginning or name tags. Maybe in future meetings you have a name tag, just say board member, guest, attorney, engineer. But back to the comments regarding the auditor's report. The first one they bring up, and I assume this is being addressed, but with respect to the website, the lack of links, I just don't think it's it seems like a website that's been built upon other websites, and there's a lot of broken links. So I'd like to see what the board's going to do with respect to transparency, making that a little bit more easier access for information.
I definitely know we're working on the website. Every one of those issues on there are being addressed.
Yes.
As far as I know, it was like a to-do list for us.
There's a punch list, like you
Yes,
say, yeah.
exactly. So,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may. On several occasions, I'm the lawyer for
I figured.
the district, by the way. My name is Richard Pringle. On several occasions, I've made reference in other meetings about the fact that this year was the first year of a new audit firm performing the audit for the district. I do not recall in past years any of the current management letter comments having been raised by the auditor. I had mentioned earlier that anytime you change, it's been my experience anyway, anytime that audit firms change, auditors change, oftentimes the new auditor has a new set of requirements and criteria that they apply, and we saw that in spades. There are a number of items they raised that we are addressing. In fact, we're addressing all of them. By law, we are required to address them all, and we're in the process of addressing them now. The one in particular about the website, as an example, there's a statute that applies to the website, and so we're in the process of making sure that the website does comply with those statutory requirements, just as an example.
There's numerous things I pointed out to myself in the audited financials. One that's glaring to me is the continued, I understand depreciation, so I don't need to, maybe other people here don't understand that, but the fixed assets of the culverts, the concrete, the drainage ditches, I understand and keep depreciating them. But my concern is the huge jump in the financials of, I did a financial spreadsheet, and we keep dropping in terms of the net position, and I understand some of that's based on depreciation, but the big jump was the decrease in net position. You know, it's 2019, it's negative 34,000, and it's 48,000, and it's 296. I understand from talking to Chris that some of that was a pay down on one of the bonds for the phasing, but my concern, and I don't want to steal other people's thunder here, is at some point we'll eventually have to start considering the degradation of the roads, the infrastructure. And so where is that in the plan with the board in putting out requests for proposals, RFPs, getting people to start estimating what it's going to cost to maintain and repair those roads and the infrastructure? First thing I would say is, for safety reasons, just get the roads striped for the next year or two. Put some striping on the roads.
yeah, we were looking at, I believe it was another 7 to 8 years before they would actually be redone.
Yeah.
We were already starting this past year to get plans in place to get some bids and everything to do.
And is there a program on the board that you put at least 3 bids out for 3, whatever you're asking for, like the lawnmower cutting, the roads, the maintenance?
Yeah, that's currently the plan.
It is. Okay, I
If
didn't
we
find that
ever
on the
get 3
website.
back is the thing.
We're trying, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We're trying to do that for everything we do today. So everything that we bid out, every time we ask for something, we're trying to get at least 3 good bids on it before we implement.
Okay.
And that's always
Because I didn't see that on the website, what your standard operating procedure would be for the board in terms of how you do RFPs, how you go out to bid for various things, because in the end, it's our tax dollars.
Oh,
I
definitely.
just want to know where it's going.
And we're trying to make sure that you do see that.
Thank you.
Rich, we don't have standard operating procedures for that drafted or created.
No, ma'am, not to my knowledge.
No.
Anybody else?
Purchasing.
No, is there any other comments, questions?
Well, should we address the comment about that?
All right,
Wait a minute.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
please.
just one other thing. With regard to the purchasing policy, I believe is what you are addressing. Again, there are a number of different statutory compliance requirements that apply with purchases of the district as a government agency, depending on the size of the purchase. So as an example, when the district board determines that it is the right time to perform either substantial maintenance of the roadways, or when the current capital improvement project is wrapped up, that paid for all of the road paving that is currently in place. When that
That's the phase one in
Yes, sir.
2025.
Yes, sir. So it's a couple of years out until that is paid off and resolved. And the board has already started talking about the next project, the next capital improvement project, and what will that look like. And so as a part of that process, the district has a plan, reclamation plan, some people refer to it as, that defines and describes not only the improvements owned by the district, but also how they're going to convey water and move water and things like that. And so all of those come into play, as well as the state laws that say, as an example, if you are going to have professional services, engineering, surveying, et cetera, services, then you're going to use a certain kind of a competitive selection process to select those services or to approve those services. Same way with contractors. If the purchase price, if the expected purchase price of certain improvements exceeds dollar thresholds in the statute, then we've got to go through certain bidding requirements. Below those thresholds, and I believe this may have been one of the items that was referred to in the audit management letter, below the thresholds in the statute, the board's decision as to how to bid out work is based upon board policy. And that's one of the policies that we are working on addressing as well. So that even below the statutory threshold, there will be something.
Since you're the lawyer for the board, there's a question for you. I read the April 1969 court order that created this district.
Yes.
Who actually owns the assets and the right-of-way of all the culverts and the roadways? Is it the district?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What I'm going to recommend is when you're going out for the RFP and looking at various improvements, to consider maybe finding other competitive utility infrastructures like cable TV and telephone, other things that could be part of an improvement in the roads and get them to pay for access, such as the only choice is Comcast. Even Comcast is very difficult. And maybe there's other companies out now, fiber optic, who want to do that grid system, and you give them the right of way and then have them pay for some of those improvements because they get the right of way into on the edges of the culverts to bury. Because I've seen that in other communities, not HOH, just other communities where they do that. So, I mean, it's an idea.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to think where to help lower our costs and also give us more access to better utilities besides just Comcast, for example.
Mr. Chairman, if I may
Please.
make one more comment. Just to, you're absolutely right, and we have talked before about the utilities companies placing improvements in the right-of-ways. And I say this regularly, but there are new people here this evening, and so I'll say it again. The right-of-way improvements are owned by the district. But as you saw back in the original 1969 judicial decree, and then in the subdivision plat that approved the right-of-ways, essentially the creation of the subdivision, the underlying fee ownership is owned by the property owners, subject to an easement in favor of the district for the right-of-way areas. Then the district in those easement areas constructs the right-of-way improvements. And that's generally how the steps are for the ownership versus a county road where the county owns the right-of-way. The district has an easement for the right-of-way, but owns the constructed improvements.
I understand.
Any other comments, questions?
I just have one.
Please.
About 20 years you can drive all the way around our subdivision.
I'm sorry?
About 20 years ago you could drive all the way around the subdivision by the canals.
Okay. You want a mic so I can hear you?
I can yell. Now I'm seeing gates everywhere, people taking it upon themselves to declare it their property. What are we gonna do about that? Because it's not their property.
They pay taxes on that property. And it's then the roads have been closed and they're only open to pedestrian traffic only.
Okay,
So
but even if pedestrian passing, they're blocking it totally.
I don't know of any that are blocking it totally. You know,
There are.
okay. I mean, that's something we're going to try to look into and go around and open them up to what were you saying, 3 feet or something?
Well, that's to be determined.
That was something that was in the
We
future here.
hadn't actually made a decision
But,
on that amount.
I mean, it is the homeowner's property, just like the property on the street is your property out front. The district just has the right of way through it.
Well,
But-
with all due respect to that, Ben, I own the property to the middle of my road.
That's what I'm saying.
I cannot block it off. Okay? with
But
all-
that's open to vehicle traffic. Everyone has that.
And the only thing that changed the perimeter roads was the board at the time.
And put the gates in and stop the traffic.
But any board can change that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, it is open to pedestrian traffic. I don't know if you guys all want to raceway around the district.
My wife's a rider,
You know.
and we do have equity in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And, you know, there's quite a few times when people, that's the place for them to travel.
How about the roads? Isn't that not a place to travel? Was it
Not
paved?
really with a horse when you have car traffic on it.
Well, we've got about 100 dump trucks a day right now
Yeah.
using that road out there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And we have kids riding out there on their bicycles that could be on alternative places that they don't have to, we don't have
As
to
long as
run
there's
that
enough
risk.
places, it shouldn't, I don't believe it should be open for cars. But at least for pedestrians or horses, or like you say, kids on their bicycle, it keeps them off the streets, it keeps them safe.
It's just how wide do you go?
Yeah.
You know, because when you open it up a little bit, you're going to get motorized vehicles through them.
Well, I'm
You're-
thinking like 3 foot, I
You know.
believe would be more than optimal.
You know, that's golf carts though. They're going to be through there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's a never-ending battle, and then it just raises everything liability for the homeowner that lives there and the homeowner for the district, because you on a horse, one of your family members falls off.
It's the same problem going down my street.
That's what I'm
though,
saying.
isn't it?
But seriously, but
Okay, when you.
I know
when
that
you
is.
wanna-
But
when you
why
wanna
not
make-
limit all that?
But
You
when you
know,
want to make, okay, then they don't go down my road either.
get off your road. I don't
I
care.
don't want golf carts on my road, and I don't want,
You know,
I'm sorry. The question really is,
It's equality.
that the same thing you're saying here, when they pass by the front of my house, my acre and a quarter goes to the middle of the road.
yes.
Okay, and if it creates a liability for me, then I want a gate. I don't think
I'm just
gonna
saying,
get
if it wasn't open to vehicle traffic though, what's the difference?
Pardon?
If your road wasn't open to vehicle traffic, then I would say gated.
Well, 15 years ago, it was a dirt road.
Russ. Oh, that guy?
No, no, over there.
All right, wherever. We're not getting there.
Mr. Chairman, that's all of my report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. All right, let's move on to old, new, and unfinished business. Is David Klopak here?
Public input first, please, sir.
I already did that
You call for public?
Yeah.
Okay, very
a
good.
couple times.
Okay.
No, he's
David Nelson.
quiet with the heart.
Okay.
He said he'll be here later, so if you
Let's
don't
move
mind
him to
when
the
he
back.
gets here.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. For real.
Yeah, fourth.
They didn't say.
Engineer selection. Where are we at with this?
Okay, we had one, you want to take, Mr. Pringle,
Yeah.
this is your floor.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. At the last board meeting, there was direction by the board for me to do a competitive selection process for professional engineering services of the district. I prepared a request for qualifications. There's a statute that deals with professional services and acquisition of professional services by a government agency, and it talks about the use of a request for qualifications process. So that's what I did. I put together a request for qualifications as directed by the board. I placed a notice in the paper. We placed the request for qualifications on the website, and then the request for qualifications was circulated and made available to interested parties. There was a deadline given for responses to be received by the district, At the time of the deadline, the district received a response from RMEC is the name of the entity. I circulated copies of RMEC's response to the board members. We closed the deadline, or I wrote the deadline of the response time so that the board would have an opportunity to review the responses. As I said, you received a response from RMEC LLC. I have reviewed that response, and there are criteria, by the way, that I outlined in the request for qualifications document for the board's consideration in reviewing responses. And I applied those same criteria to our MEC's response to look at first the question of whether the responder is qualified, and then there was a second set of criteria that the board could then use to determine which one of the qualified responders was the preferred response. All of those criteria, by the way, are listed on page 8 of the RFQ. They include items such as the responder's capabilities, the adequacy of the responder's personnel, the past record of the responder, the experience of the responder, the completeness and accuracy of the response, the compliance with the specifications requirements, the abilities of the responder's personnel, past performance and relevant experience, current and projected workloads. Those were the substance of the criteria for the board's consideration in first determining which responders were qualified and then in selecting the most qualified responder. As a result of the district receiving a response, I applied essentially all of those criteria to the response by RMEC, and I believe that their response is qualified, meets all the criteria and the requirements of the RFQ document so that the board can consider them for possible selection. The next step in the process, as described here, is in the request for qualifications document, is for the board to consider and review the response. The responder is here. They are present and are able, if it is the desire of the board, to receive an oral input from the responder as well. They are here to do that if that is the board's desire. So the next step can be, if you want to receive some oral presentation from the responder, you can, and then you can make a decision as to how you want to go forward after that.
I would entertain the idea of
Would you like to invite them up?
Yeah. Come on up and tell us a little bit about your firm.
How close you hold it?
There you go, sir.
May want to use one of these because most of the time people say they can't hear me anyway, so come in handy. What was that? Pardon me? Huh? My wife does that a lot. I don't understand.
Mine does too.
Good evening. My name is Ron Edenfield, managing member with RMEC LLC, and I have with me tonight Joe Harmon, one of my partners, and Dan Sheepo, both partners. Dan recently became a PE, and so we've now have two PEs in the office. PE being professional engineer. We've been practicing in Southwest Florida for cumulatively around 72 years. Personally, I've got about 38 years in the area doing primarily water resources work. We've firm has been organized back in 2011. Prior to that which is where I got to know these gentlemen at, was a firm called ECT. We were together there from 1999 forward to 2011 when ECT corporately pulled out of the area. Prior to that, it was RM Edenfield Company that was started back in 1990 and ran until 1999. So got a number of years of experience in this area. Prior to being in the corporate world, worked with South Florida Water Management District, was with them for about 6 years, from 84 to 90, primarily in the role of compliance, regulatory, permitting, plan review, and permit compliance. So we've got experience in that area as well. Dan previously worked with the City of Fort Myers in plan review, so I understand part of this position will be doing review of permits, so for driveway connections and such. So we do have good experience in that area. Professionally, as I said, we're primarily work in the area of water resources. We also do roadway design, drainage design, stormwater quality, water quality projects. We did the 10-mile canal filter marsh, if you're familiar with that, the original phase 1 of that. We also did the Billy Creek filter marsh. So I have a good bit of experience in the water quality area as well. I think that's generally our background. I know it doesn't tell you a whole lot. I'm really a whole lot better at answering questions I am than blowing our own horn. So could we, at this point, turn it over to questions if anybody has any?
I do.
All right.
Actually, I read through your whole report. It sounds like you've actually worked for the City of Fort Myers, Lee County, the Town of Fort Myers Beach, and Lee County Port Authority. Have you been doing any work with the City of Bonita Springs, and what's your thoughts on being able to work with code enforcement and the planning and stuff with the City of Bonita in relationship to our community?
We haven't done any contract work with. We haven't been under contract to do any work for the City of Bonita Springs, but we have done work within the corporate limits of Bonita Springs. Some compliance issues, dealing with code enforcement. I believe we have a good relationship with that group. The county or the town engineer is an individual that we've known for a number of years professionally. We have a good relationship there. So I don't anticipate that there will be any issues in working with the City of Bonita Springs. We have done a number of projects in the corporate limits, so have experience in the area.
Okay, another question that I would have, you worked for the West Palm Beach District, for the Water Management District of the state of Florida, is that correct?
I was with South Florida for 18 months on the East Coast, and then had an opportunity to transfer to Fort Myers. Drove through downtown Fort Myers and said, "Hey, this looks a whole lot more like Macon, Georgia, than it does," which is where I grew up. So got transferred over to Fort Myers and been here ever since.
Okay. Anybody out here have any questions?
I can talk loud. Jimmy Tapley, Stillwell Parkway. I just want to know where your office is located.
Office is located in downtown Fort Myers. We're on McGregor Boulevard, just west of 41. I live in the Briarcliff area, and being in that area, generally, if I've got any kind of work down south or meetings down south, I generally will just work from the home office until time for the meeting, so it's a shorter trip to come to if I, say, for example, if we have a meeting down here, it would just be work with the schedule. But if need be, we can be here within about 25 minutes.
Thank you.
This is a question regarding the 1970 and the 2005 plans for basically the drainage. And I remember reading in there that there was originally 10 foot by 4 foot, then 10 foot by 6 foot, 2 underground canals, basically concrete canals draining into Spring Creek from this whole area. Now, I understand our responsibility and our taxes pay for this drainage area. Are you aware of who's responsible for those concrete culverts that go into Spring Creek? Do people maintain that? Do they clean it out? I mean, I'm just because it goes under Highway 41. Because my concern is there's so much activity in our area now, and you can see where the 1 inch drop every 24 hours, 2.5 inch drop. I understand they were designed for 9 inch per 24-hour drop in these culverts, and I can tell you they do not drop 9 inches in 24 hours in some of these areas. So it wasn't laid out very well, or maybe it's settled. So I'm wondering how that's impacting eventually going into Spring Creek, because if it backs up there, or maybe it is backing up there because it's not clean, it's impacting us in our drainage area.
I haven't looked at that specifically, but if the culvert's going underneath US 41, it's property of the FD, or the DOT. So and it's their responsibility to operate and maintain that in a free and clear and flowing condition. I'm not sure about the 9 inches per hour or 9 inches per day, but there would be a design standard that would have been applied to that as far as the passing of the flow through that, based on the upstream watershed that's contributing to that. And I understand that's a bit of a concern here is with respects to the water that's actually coming into the district. I'll tell you a story about my background with San Carlos Estates. Back when I worked for South Florida Water Management District, which was back in the last millennium, back when I had much darker hair and a ponytail, but that was another story completely. Bill, you might remember those days, but that was
Vaguely.
a long time. The 75 had been completed for a while. Estero was still Sweetwater Ranch. And there was a lot of water coming out of Sweetwater Ranch where it wasn't supposed to. And it was coming out, hitting the levee, going out to the I-75 right-of-way, coming down the right-of-way, and then into the district. It was creating some substantial problems. I don't recall the lady's name. I've tried to find it, and those archives have long evaporated. But she had contacted me, and again, I was with the district compliance regulatory program, and we came out and looked at it, and I went back and looked at the plan of reclamation, and the plan of reclamation before the interstate went to the other side of the interstate. So I said, according to this, you're authorized to build that dike right out to the interstate, and which I think they did on a Saturday, which effectively stopped all the flow coming in from the north, and began backing water up on Sweetwater Ranch, much to Mr. Taylor's. He wasn't very happy about it. He was the owner of the cattle. And he actually had myself and one of the ecologists from the Water Management District come out and look at all this flooding that had been caused by those people down in the estates that caused all these problems for them. And I'm like, Comer, your water's not supposed to go there anyway. Why don't you let it go out the way it's supposed to go? So I got to show you this. And so we're riding around in the buggy, and the cows were grazing on the maiden cane, about belly deep water. And the cow jumped up out of the water as we approached it and ran up on the levee, and the tip of its tail was gone. And Comer said, "Look at that! That cow's been in the water so long, its tail's rotted off." And the poor biologist just got totally upset about it. She was just, "Oh my God, we've got to fix this. You can't be having that." And I'm in the back of the vehicle about to laugh myself out of the chair. And Comer was about to laugh too. But the point being is that plan of reclamation gives you a great deal of liberty with what water comes into you. And I think going back and looking at that, and if there is inflow, then dealing with that, and I'll work closely with the attorney on that to work within the limits of the authority of the law to deal with that in a way that minimizes your issues and maybe provides some relief. Sorry for the long story, but I think it's funny.
Well, personally, I want to thank you for that, because that's been a concern that a number of the residents out here have been looking at, is the water that's coming in from other locations into our system, and finding out what we can do about that to either get reimbursed for the maintenance, the cleaning. These taxpayers here should not have to pay for that. So I'm sure that everybody here is in favor, and glad you said that.
Other questions?
Give it back to the attorney.
engineer? Simple question. Have you been an engineer for any Chapter 298 districts?
Not actually been engaged by 298. My district experience has been with, I was district engineer for the Lavelle Private Drainage District, which is where the C-43 reservoirs is built now, or being built now. I have dealt with 298 districts. I do a great deal of agricultural work all over Henry and Glades County, Collier County. Most of that real estate is particularly in the eastern parts of those areas, are covered by 298 districts. So I'm very familiar with the 298s and how they operate, and almost government. So.
Good. Pringle?
So, Mr. Chairman, you have a written response that is before you. You have received oral comments as well. The request for qualifications document reserves for the Board of Supervisors the right to accept the response that in its judgment will be in the best interest of the district, or to reject any or all responses in its sole discretion, and to take such other and further action as the Board of Supervisors deems appropriate and in the best interest of the district in its sole discretion. I included, and I was reading directly out of the request for qualifications, I included that sentence in the request for qualifications so that the board has so that I reserved for the board all of the decision-making authority that I could in this case. Based upon the language that I read into the record for you, the district has essentially as much latitude as I could give the district board in decision-making in this matter. And so it would be up to the board now to deliberate and to decide what action the board believes is in the best interest of the district.
I got one question for you. In your professional opinion from reading this, do you believe that they meet all the qualifications necessary if we made a decision to hire them to being capable of doing the job?
Yes, sir, I believe so, from everything that I've read and from the comments this evening.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the board, would you mind if I made a comment real quick?
Please.
I'll just do my normal. My family has been acquaintances with Mr. Edenfield for probably 30 some odd years now. He used to work with my father primarily at the South Florida Water Management District, but I think there might have been a couple of other stints involved. I can attest to the board that Mr. Edenfield is of the highest quality as a professional. If I were a resident of St. Carlos Estates, I would not have any concerns that he was not capable of handling the job. And I will tell you, as your engineer for the past 22 odd years, that he will be up to the task should you choose to hire him.
Thank you.
My only concern is that we only got one bid. Like you were saying, you put something out the bid. This is completely notorious for this district. Every time we put anything out the bid, everyone's all gung ho. We'll get 30 responses, and we get one. Well, to me, it seems that the company's completely qualified with the endorsement of Mr. With our current engineer.
Is there any money difference?
That's my next question.
Well, we have to go for a discussion with that money. This is probably a question for Mr. Kringle.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may. The next step in the process is for the board to make a selection. If the board selects our MEC, then we will negotiate the agreement. This is what the request for this is how the request for qualifications differs from a request for proposals or a request for bids process. In a request for qualifications, which is typically used for professional services, the intent is for the board to select the professional who will provide the best services for the district. Then the pricing is negotiated as a part of the negotiation of the agreement, the professional services agreement. It would be an independent contract that would be negotiated. There would be a description of the scope of the services. There would be a description of the fees that would be charged and the methodology used in charging fees. That would all be a part of the negotiations that would occur, and then that agreement, if we are able to negotiate an agreement that is satisfactory, then that would be brought back to the board for the board's final decision. Again, as much as possible, I've tried to reserve for the board as much decision making as I can, but that's the next step after the board makes a selection decision tonight.
I want to just, you and I were the ones charged with putting together the
That's
documents and the search for the engineers. That's something you and I would continue to do
Absolutely,
for
yes,
the next month, and the talking about the pricing and stuff.
Correct.
And bringing that together.
So I would, Mr. Chairman, I would prepare the agreement, and just like with the request for qualifications, we did the same process where I prepared the request for qualifications, but then I sent it to Supervisor Bradford to review and approve before it was released. The same thing would happen. There would be negotiations that would occur that would either involve the three of us, or that I would write up, or that Mr. Edenfield would propose. But ultimately, it would all pass before Supervisor Bradford before it went to anyone else, because he is a part of the negotiating. He's a part of the negotiating team for the district.
Yeah, I would personally like to see us, the three of us, have a meeting before we proceed after tonight's meeting, and we get together, the three of us, and we have a meeting and do the formalities, and then let you continue on.
At the board's pleasure. Yes, sir. That would be fine.
Okay.
After the board makes a selection. That's the next step, is making a selection. And then if the board makes the selection tonight, then yes, sir, we could do exactly what you proposed.
Okay. Miss Judy Taffy would like to say something.
It seems that the previous couple of meetings, Jim, you were concerned about how much Morris Depew was charging. And now you're making a selection and you have no idea if you're going to be paying more or if you are going to be paying less.
You're absolutely correct, and that is true. And I, for one, was concerned about the distance of his location of his office in respect to the district and what the fees and things were along that direction. Until such time as Mr. Pringle and I meet with Mr. Edenfield, then I can't answer that question for you. It depends on, depending on the fees will determine whether or not we hire him. So that's where it would stand until this board finalizes that meeting and listens to what he has to say. We won't have that answer.
But I'm understanding from Mr. Pringle that you have to make the selection first.
No, we make the choice of which one we want, of which in this case we only have one to choose from. So if a motion gets put on the floor to hire him, at that point, the board will make that decision. From there, we will move to the second phase of that, of which during this course of this month, Mr. Pringle and I and Mr. Edenfield will have a meeting, and then Mr. Pringle will write up anything else we have going along with that would be finalized at the next meeting. And until that occurs, he's not actually going to be our engineer, if I'm correct, Mr. Pringle.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay, so that's where we determine the fees, et cetera, what it costs, and how things are going to be handled at that point. And I can reassure you that I'm fully aware of what my question was earlier on, and that is definitely in my consideration for how we continue after this meeting.
Thank you.
Please, Dina.
I can speak loudly. Dina Wilcoxon. Further on that subject, Mr. Pringle, this question is for you. Further on that, I mean, it's more than just distance. It's, getting up to speed for somebody compared to somebody that's been with us for how many years,
22.
built, 22 years, that knows our system and knows our roads and knows our drainage inside, outside, upside down, and all the history of our community. So that has to figure into the cost also. And will the dollars and cents be done in a public format? I believe somebody brought up earlier, transparency. I feel like that's kind of being sheltered a little bit from us.
Mr. Pringle, you look. I wouldn't mind being part of the negotiating also. So I don't know how we do this. Like you do it at the next meeting, or do it at.
So,
Like you said, we could.
Could I interject here for a moment? Does the board ever ask for members of the district to help in a voluntary role based on their skills and experiences to help with a process like this?
Not to my knowledge.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Is there, because I read, I didn't see anything in the
No, sir. There has not.
prevents somebody from helping, not a board member, but an assistant, for example, in this aspect. If you're not going to find at least 2 other engineering firms, then I would suggest a more scrutiny in the skill sets of the firm that is being considered because of, for example, what this woman just said, lack of 22 years of experience. This gentleman said not a lot of direct experience with Statute 298. And to me, I'm wondering, is he just reviewing permits? Or what about eventually changing the roads? What about future infrastructure? We have problems with the water coming in versus the water going out, not just the water within the district. So does the firm have those skills and those experiences? Or are they going to, quote, learn on the job on our tax dollars? So the question is, does the board accept other people to help on something like this?
I would definitely entertain it. Please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yes, the board can appoint others to be a part of the negotiating team to negotiate the contract terms and to also further explain to the board when the board is making its final decision to on the agreement on the independent contract as to whether to approve the independent contract or not. Comments can be received at that point as well if there has been someone else appointed to act on the district's behalf. That can occur. I did have a comment about multiple board members. We would need to be careful that we satisfy the sunshine law.
It would have to be an open format if there were multiple board members.
Yes, sir. If there were multiple board members present, that's what I would suggest that you do.
Yeah. So I'm looking at, like, we just have a few options here. Hire them, or go down the process of hiring them. Put this back out for bid again to see if we can get more, or just stay where we're at with Mr. Morris. Is that true, or those are our 3 options basically?
You've summarized them.
All right, sir. And how long was the process that we had it out for bid? The last one, was it?
It was fast because we said last month the board said do it, and in fact I asked if we could move the board meeting was supposed to be held on the 20th, and I asked if we could move it to the 27th to give us a little bit more time so that we would have given opportunity for responders to respond, interested firms to respond to the request for qualifications. So
I just want to make more, an educated decision. I hate to just jump into one thing because we only have one responder. I don't know, that's my thing. And I don't know. Oh, please.
It seems that, from what I'm understanding, is if you do not accept this one bid, then there is the option of staying with the previous engineering firm that you've had for 22 years. I know that from the previous meetings, there was some concern about an error that was made on behalf of the previous engineer. And I just want to say, in the 14 years that I spent serving on this board, we often had issues with our subcontractors that required us to speak to them and straighten things out. We didn't fire them. We go, whether it was a lawn mowing person or if it was someone clearing trees, if they didn't fulfill the job to our satisfaction, we would go back to them and say, this wasn't done properly, or this is the way we wanted it done and it's not done that way. We wouldn't just fire them. We would give them the opportunity to correct it and continue. When you've had a good relationship with someone for 22 years, they know the system, they have been here for us, we've never had a problem with them before, and it just seems to me, if you've got something good, why fix it if it ain't broke?
Definitely. And I would actually like to see the cost savings before we sign on with somebody. So is there a way to do that?
It's my understanding that this isn't actually signing a contract. What we've done is we've selected a professional, and now it's up to the board to choose, okay, we can do that. Then there's
Yeah, but it's up to
process
one
of the
board
bidding.
member.
Then there's the process of the bidding. In other words, they're not getting a contract yet. They're just getting approval to bid.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So in other words, we're not hiring them tonight. We're just approving them.
Yes, and then whenever they
Bring a
negotiate,
proposal.
and then we'd come back next month to see. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It would come back to the board.
Could we
to
not
vote
in that
for the
time
final.
actually request more bids or more proposals during that time?
I think it's a legality thing. It would have to be, correct?
Yes, sir.
If I may.
Please.
What you're describing are two different acts. If the board decided that they want to receive more responses or extend the time period to receive more responses, then the RMEC response can stand as submitted, and then the board could extend the time for others to also respond. That is an option. But the board does not have the option, I don't believe, of negotiating a contract with RMEC and at the exact same time asking for other responses as well. Yes, sir. It's more of a one or the other.
We can keep them as being approved, like they've sent us, and that they meet the criteria. And then we could extend it another, whatever time limit is, and look for others, and if nobody comes in, then allow them to do their proposal. But tonight isn't about money dollars, it's about whether we accept the fact that they have
The
the
selection.
qualifications.
Yes, sir. It's the selection based upon the qualifications and the criteria. Yes, sir.
In the back, Jason?
Mr. Frankel, question for you. Mr. Frankel, question. So when you do an RFP, you put a proposal for bid, right? How does that bid usually come back to district?
This particular process is a request for qualification.
That's already done. There's only one guy qualified. So
That's
now,
right.
Now what we do now is we negotiate a request for a bid. So how does that process work?
With this responder or
Any other response to the world, I think it's a request
Sure.
for bid sent back to the board as a still envelope, right?
I'm sorry. I think I now understand the question. There are other methods of making a competitive selection. The method used for this was a request for qualifications. There's another method called a request for bids process. I think that's what you're talking about.
That's the qualification part. Now he's going to use a bid. So the question is, point to blank, is how does a board member have a vote to negotiate a price for the work? You say, this is what we want you to do. Give us your bid back. You're going to have a board meeting. All three people see it. Compare what we have now, and you're done.
That is a different process altogether than this process that tracks the statute.
I can tell you, if the county goes out and get RFP bid, it comes back and seal it up, it has to go to the next commissioner.
And I think what you may be,
They're not looking for bids.
I think what you're talking about is a different process. It's not an RFQ process. It is a request for proposals process or a request for bids process where individuals are pre-qualified to submit a response. So the county may say, we want to do a request for bids for construction services. And we want contractors to pre-qualify. tell us that you have the insurance, tell us that you have the bonding capacity, tell us that you have the experience to perform the construction services that we want, maybe you or others to perform in the future.
I totally understand that part.
Okay.
Pass that part. Look, one person put in for it, and I have a board member that is saying, you're gonna get together and talk about how much it's gonna charge. The question was how much it's gonna charge. That was the issue worse than two. So how do we have one board member and you and the other guy bidding?
No.
Charge, bring it back and.
Okay, and I apologize if I'm still trying to understand completely, but what could happen, or what has been described as a possible method to negotiate the contract is for a board member to negotiate the contract and bring it back to the board. And I apologize, that was the method that I described because that is the normal method. A board member and or legal counsel will negotiate the agreement, and then if the agreement is not impassed, the agreement that is proposed, the draft agreement, is brought back to the board for the board's approval, which the board can approve or reject in the board's sole discretion. There is an alternative method that may be closer to what you are talking about, where in a board meeting, the responder, or MEC in this case, would negotiate the contract terms with the board in a board meeting. Is that what you're talking about doing? Sure. Well,
Questions are asked, I mean, it's not just going one board member going.
And don't we have a budget?
And when I say sure, what I mean is I understand what you're after.
Okay.
I understand what you're talking about now, and I apologize for not having understood that earlier. But that is a method that can be used, and in fact, when the chair was talking about also wanting to be a part of the negotiating process, I indicated to him that would trigger the Sunshine Law. And so the triggering of the Sunshine Law would mean that we would notice a meeting of the board, and the discussions would be in the presence of the full board, not the negotiating team.
Somebody's probably going to question, hey, what are you going to charge for this, and this? Give us the RMBC. They should go come back to the board and go, here's what we charge. Correct? Not one board member negotiating the prices, nobody else being. That's all I was saying.
Sure. And I think, if I understand correctly, and I believe I now do, what the process that you're talking about is, instead of a board member talking, the RMEC representative would talk to the full board, as they have done this evening.
Or somebody from the district. Exactly. Negotiate and bring it to the board as a package deal.
That is also an
alternative. Board members negotiating with somebody, basically hire somebody else, hire
We
somebody
have
else.
to stay within that budget.
By himself.
Yes, the board, once the board decides to move forward with a responder, then it's up to the board to decide how they move forward from there in terms of the negotiating of the agreement.
This is the same that we are suggesting here, that John just said, open the numbers, open whatever they're gonna do to the people, see and understand, and then the board can make a decision.
Yeah, that's what's going to, I guess, transpire next month.
Transparency. That's the key word here.
Yeah.
Transparency.
You have a question, Jane?
So, am I understanding we have one option? Is
Correct.
the
Yes.
person we have currently not wanting this anymore?
Because Mr. Bradford did open it up for discussion last time when he said to have him come back also and present his
That's what I'm
proposal.
saying, we're acting like we have one, but.
We really have two.
because We do have two.
Correct.
Bill was invited to apply. He did not.
So he does not want this position anymore. Because as I'm hearing, he's made the one mistake. I know
Well,
I had an
personally,
employee-
Bill thought he had a conflict with me and chose, according to
Okay, but
him,
let me speak.
not to apply.
He's worked here. He made, so I've heard one mistake. If I have an employee for 22 years, I'm certainly gonna go talk to him
not
before I
an
say you're
employee.
done.
He's
I
not
mean,
an
I
employee.
just-
I'm sorry.
Employee.
I know, But if he was, it's almost like he has, I mean, he's made one mistake out of all these years in our water district. And so.
No,
it's
not just one.
It's not just a matter of a mistake, it's
Right.
also a matter of cost.
Right.
Why would we hire someone else if we can lower our costs?
But if we're gonna retrain, go through
Yeah, but
everything,
the thing is,
that's
that's
gonna
what the
cost.
qualifications are for.
Tammy,
He knows what
text
he's
Rocco,
doing.
tell him.
That's why we asked for a letter of qualifications.
So I'm understanding our current one does not want the position.
You got a question?
Please.
That's not the understanding that I have. My understanding is gentleman here, which I respect him highly, his engineering firm, et cetera, okay? But when you have somebody on board for 22 years, you get a comfort zone where you just do whatever you want, whenever you want to, and you charge, and that's what's happened, okay? Open your eyes. This gentleman here, I've got a question for him, okay? You said you were very familiar. You're an engineer, on record. This is like reading a set of blueprints, people. It's not rocket science, okay? You got a full set of plans of San Carlos Estate. It shows every water runway in there, every ditch, every culvert. It shows the direction it goes, okay? It's a very simple thing to read. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's mathematical equations. You go in there, you take measurements, you survey it, you look at it. You said you were familiar with San Carlos Estates, is that not correct? Mm-hmm. Then what's the problem? Make a decision. That's what we're here for. Make a decision and move forward.
I agree, but I hate to pay more or
We're not there, man.
You know,
We're not paying You're not paying more. You're saying, yes, we'd like to make a choice here. Make the choice, let the man put a proposal together, and then get everybody's opinion in here and make a decision. Let people vote on it.
But aren't we on, don't we have a budget? We have a budget?
Yeah, but I'll step back.
No, I'm as long as it all comes back and I'm with these guys. Transparency. I want to come back
Ron
and
Brown.
hear everything. So
No decisions are made outside of this
Exactly.
board.
yeah, all right.
There's no decisions that I or anybody else can make outside of this board. The board makes the decisions. And number two, if Ben wants to sit in, I will step back. I was appointed and asked to do this. But it's immaterial to me whether I sit there, Ben sits there, or Jennifer sits there. We're only sitting in as the third party. So I don't have to be the person sitting there. But
Oh, wait a minute, so you guys are accountable to us, we get the vote for you guys, so that's it's not just one of three, it's for me the most important.
ultimately, you do elect us.
And I was just add, so last month, it was a very well-reasoned, very well-justified decision to go through this process. If you want to start over and go back a month in time and start over, I don't agree with that. Let's just move forward. We got some proposals and let's see if the money works, and then if not, then we go out and get more bids, because we had very good reasons last month to make the decision to go through this process.
You're correct.
It's not correct.
And that's exactly what would happen. If between Mr. Pringle and whoever the third party is, Mr. Edenfield, if an agreement cannot be brought forward that meets the board's approval and ultimately that of you guys, then it starts over again. There's no decision being made during the course of this month by any one of the three people that'll be involved in that.
So you make a motion?
Yes.
I'm going to make a motion that we move forward and go through the process, and then we'll see what happens at the. So I'm making a motion that we move forward with RMC.
Second.
Third.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
If that motion can be two parts. Number one, to determine that RMEC is qualified, and to direct the negotiations to occur, then that's good. Because under the request for qualifications, the first step that the first decision that the board makes is to determine whether the responders are qualified. So if you can add that to the language of the motion, then that's a more than sufficient motion. And you can just say, yes, we do. And we'll
Yes, we do approve that they're qualified.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need to vote on that again now?
What's the
Second.
second part? Where's the second part?
So the motion was that RMEC is qualified,
That's correct.
and that we are directed to, the negotiating team is directed to negotiate a contract to be brought back to the board for final approval.
So moved. And by the way, that does include which three people?
You, me,
Jim Bradford, and the engineer. Correct?
That's your,
Yes,
that's
sir.
your, yes, sir.
Yes.
That's your call. Yes, sir.
One more thing, there's several requests here to add people from the community onto this committee, and I think the board should consider that. And John here sounds like a volunteer.
I don't know how this is all going to work with meetings. How, do you have any idea when you guys are going to get together to negotiate anything? Well, if you'll be available at the time, but I don't know how this is all going to work.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if the board says that the negotiating team, I think is the phrase that I used in the motion, that if the negotiating team is comprised of members of the public as well, then we'll schedule the meetings at an appropriate time for whoever the board says is the negotiating team.
Your thoughts?
Good.
Can we do it like this? We have the negotiating team. We have some members out here who have said or expressed their wanting to get involved. And if they want to do that, can they meet with or give us their names? We'll call them up, try to schedule a meeting with all of us together. It doesn't change who the board members are that are the team that's going to originate it. They're invited to participate. Would that be correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is an option, yes, sir.
Is that okay with you guys? That you're invited to participate?
Yeah, I think that provides the transparency.
Sorry, we cannot hear you.
I think a team should be at least 3 people. So now you have a team of 2, the lawyer and you, then you have the guy applying for the job. It's just one more person there. I think odd.
Well, he just has to be there because he has to tell us what he's going to charge us.
How about 2 people from the bowler?
But
Clark, you just
I agree with you,
Clark
Jason.
said he will, and this gentleman here said he would.
John.
So if they would just give us their names before they leave, so that we
Clark
can.
and John.
Pardon?
Clark and John.
Clark
This guy,
Hepburn
Clark
said
Hepburn.
yes, he would, and what's your
Clark
name?
Hepburn. John Salucci.
And John said he would.
And John Salucci.
Right.
But it gives everybody the transparency.
Right.
Yep.
That's correct.
You
Okay.
can have more than 2 people if you really want.
Yeah, whoever wants to go.
There you go.
But are they part of the negotiating team or
If
just
it's-
participating in the meeting?
This is a question for Mr. Pringle. If it's necessary, would the outside taxpayers that might help the board, they're not voting, but if they sign non-disclosure, confidentiality, so what they're learning during the negotiations are not to disclose it, but they have a review that eventually can come up in a public hearing. And they give their input, and the board presents the input from the public. So there's nobody identified as who's bringing these issues up, but then they're also subject to confidentiality for the board.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I was trying to think through as the process was changing and being described differently, what extra steps we need to add. That will be one of the things that I will ask you for. And so, Mr. Chairman, if the board, was a question called yet on the motion? There was a motion.
Motion was made, seconded, and third.
Okay, so there was a vote of approval.
Yes.
And the vote of approval was of a negotiating team. And in addition to that now, the discussion of the board is to notify.
Include members of the
Yes,
district.
to notify individuals who have volunteered and to allow them to participate in the negotiations. Is that
Perfect,
what
yes.
I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, all right, then we'll do that. We can do that.
So are those individuals?
They are not members of the negotiating team.
But
No.
are they,
They're guests.
they were wanting to be silent or unknown?
Well, I'll take care of that.
So I
No,
don't,
ma'am,
I
they
don't
will not.
include their names in the minutes.
I'll need them so that we can contact them.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get their information.
Well, I've got the name. My concern is
Do I
Mr.
include their
Edenfield
names
would
in the minutes?
Yes.
I just want to briefly say thank you to the board and thank you to the members for the opportunity to be here and present. Also want to thank Bill for the kind and gracious words. His father was a mentor for me many years ago, and so it's greatly appreciated. We look forward to sitting down with you and negotiating a competitive agreement. I think we'll be able to successfully do that. We're a small firm. We work for select clients. You've got 100% of the ownership team here tonight to kind of show you just how much this opportunity means to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I know I'm kind of jumping around here. We're good with all that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I swore I saw David walk in here.
Back there.
Are you here? I know you got other stuff to do here tonight, but we wanted to we wanted to get that out of the way. We bypassed you until you got here.
What?
The
David Klopak.
David Klopak, I was going to put him up next.
Yeah.
Just in case he doesn't leave again.
Whatever he has to continue.
Yeah, what do we got to finish that up with, the driveway extension?
The driveway extension, he was supposed to,
You guys should have received everything a while back.
That's what I'm saying. We have to make a motion on that or anything, or?
well, y'all have to decide whether you're going to allow for
This
the
is
variance
as far as
and
we were
let him
concerned.
stand as is,
Yeah.
or
Since
make
he's
him
responsible
rip
for
it out.
replacing the
Right.
culvert.
Bill, right?
We agreed on that
Yeah.
at the last meeting. All he had to do was get the permits in order and pay the fees. That's all that was left.
And all that.
Yeah, all that was turned into more.
And for the board to make the final approval because the request is of a variance. So the board needs to make the final approval based on the recommendation of the engineer.
The status of this particular endeavor is the information was provided to us. We received it prior to this meeting. It was forwarded on for the board to consider for approval or otherwise.
So, is there a motion that needs to be made? Or
Yes, sir, to approve the submittal
okay.
as a variance from your normal requirements. That sound about right?
I believe so.
Yes.
So moved. Motion made.
I'll second. Jim,
Third.
does that work for you? Does that work? Okay.
Okay. Dina.
Order, I'm sorry, this is kind of a niggly thing for me. There's no such thing as a third on a motion. Sorry.
No.
Motion to approve, second, discussion.
And
All in
then
favor?
call the question.
Opposed?
Right. Call for the vote.
Or unanimous?
So, Mr. Chairman, she's right.
Yes.
And a little OCD.
It's okay.
So motion made.
A motion has been made, a motion was seconded. Call for discussion and then call for the vote.
Any
Of the
discussion?
board. No, sir, discussion on the board.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion on the board?
No.
And if not, then call for a vote on the motion.
Call for a vote on the motion. Aye.
Second.
So then the vote is unanimous.
Unanimous.
There you go. And we'll try to do that moving forward.
Okay. Can you go back?
Oh, Dave, you can go back to your wife now if you need to run.
She hasn't called me yet, so I can wait.
I just wanted to see you get wet, start running for the door.
All right, a motion to transfer $50,000 from Bank of America.
Okay, so our budget allows for,
Microphone.
the budget had that we were going to have increase our reserve funds $50,000. And so we have the funds available in the general maintenance account. And so the motion is the request is to get permission to move that money from the general maintenance account to our reserve fund at Northern Trust.
So motion made.
Second.
Discussion? Jennifer, makes sense? Good?
Call for the
vote?
vote.
Aye.
Second. Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, the next item is, again, in our budget for the CIP. You all last year had included an additional principal pay down to Bank of America CIP Phase 1 loan of $94,000. We have the funds available. We have the funds available to do that, plus pay the next installment on August 1st. I provided you with that unpaid assessment of unpaid taxes to show that we have at least 11,000 more to come in for this year, and so I think that we will not find ourselves short in that bank account if we go forward and make that $94,000 additional pay down. So I'm asking the board for a motion to do that because we have to notify Bank of America in July of our intentions so that when they draw the payment down, they'll be drawing that additional funds.
Motion made to transfer 94,000. Discussion? Good. Call for vote? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right. Ooh. Meeting location change.
Okay, I guess we don't have that up on the board. Pastor Riley was here a few minutes ago, but the new meeting location is going to be at the Chamber of Commerce building over next to the Bonita Springs number 3 fire station. Everybody know where that's located? Come out of the end of Strike Lane, if you cross straight on over, I don't know if you can make a left turn there or not. Yeah. So you need to come out off of Strike Lane and onto 41, up to New 41, make a left-hand turn, go past the fire station to the Walgreens traffic light. That'll bring you around behind the Chamber of Commerce building. And that's where our meetings are going to be in the future.
And please explain the savings.
Pardon?
Explain the savings
Savings.
of doing it and the location.
Chris can probably give us that number. It turns out that it was a little less than I thought. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, so in order to use the chamber office, you had to become a member. The annual membership fee is $500. We were paying the town suites $150 a month, which was a total of about $1,800 for the year for the meetings. So we're saving at least $1,300.
And the new room is permanently set up with computers, seating for 60 people, and they have water and stuff available for us at no additional cost. So, and they have seating that in the event that we need 100 seats, they can add seats to the room to give us that accommodation.
Will there ever be discussions on another day besides that third Tuesday? Like today, Monday is perfect.
Can we decide, make a discussion for that at the next meeting and put it on the agenda?
How do you want us to do that?
So I can appreciate what you're saying. There's the address on the screens above us, and thank you very much. And again, to the pastors for making this building available for us.
I just closed the meeting, by the way. I was just saying that.
No.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, to take any action, you need to have a motion before the board to change the location. And just as you can change the location by board action, you can also change the date of the meeting by board action. That's something that you can do at the next board meeting. You can have that on the agenda or at any time. Up to this point, you've already set the dates of the meetings into place. So if you want to change them, it would also require board action to change them as well. Because they've already been approved.
The other thing is we've also already set the dates for the use of the chamber for the next 12 months. So the chamber has already been, unless they have an opening on a Monday, then
That's something we should probably look at next meeting to see.
That's why I said that was
That we really need to check, not just to I understand your need, but we may have other people out here who can't make it on Monday night. So we have to listen to everybody there. Plus, we need to check with the chambers, see if there's an opportunity there to move it to a Monday. We will do everything we can to try to accommodate you.
What if you were to alternate the Jim? 1 month on a Monday, 1 month on a Tuesday.
That should get really confusing for everybody who wants to attend the meeting.
Even month is Monday, odd month is Tuesday.
I just like the Mondays to get it over with.
I really hope the board overrules you on that one.
Well, look at the attendance on a Monday.
Yeah, the attendance is huge.
Attendance on huge, so.
Well, you
We
had to
also have
sign
to
for
sign.
it.
I know.
First time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Bradford.
So
So you need to make a motion.
make a motion on the location
Location
change. Motion made to 25071 Chamber of Commerce Drive. Still sticking with the third Tuesday of every month as of now. But if we could add it to the agenda for discussion next meeting. Motion made.
I'll second that.
Discussion? You good? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Hey, we got this done.
Julie, do
Finally.
make the budget of the in the city of Cave Springs.
The Stillwell guardrail repair. Where are we at with
What
that?
about, we have the
Sewer.
sewer review.
Sewer review.
Sewer review.
Sewer.
Oh, I believe we were skipping that.
So are you, when you, what are we
We
gonna do
discuss
with it? Next month?
We need to discuss that at all, or as far as
Sewer viewer goes, I think the board has decided we're not using them anymore.
No, sweep.
Sleeper man.
Sorry, Sweeper Man, and then we do have one offer in right now, sewer viewer. Next month we can have additional.
Table.
So then it would, yes, sir. So, Mr. Chairman, if you're going to continue it the next month, then a motion to continue the item to the next month's meeting would be an appropriate action to
Motion
move
made.
this along.
Move sewer viewer to next month.
Second that.
Discussion. You all right with that, Jennifer?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I guess with the manager selection and the
Well,
secretary
now
treasurer.
we're on the Stillwell guardrail.
Still a guardrail.
Okay.
Bill, can you address the Stillwell guardrail repair where we stand?
Sort of. The guardrail repair, we've had difficulties making. We've been endeavoring to communicate with the vendor or the contractor that was retained or hired to perform the work. To this point, our understanding is they are trying to acquire a new piece of equipment in order to complete the work, and once they've done so, they will proceed. That's unfortunately the best information that we were able to get in advance of the meeting tonight.
Is that Alford or is that Thrasher?
I believe it's the guardrail contractor. I
Okay.
don't remember their name off the top of my head.
That's Alford.
It was on the other coast,
Barry
wasn't
Alford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Because when I talked with him, he acted like they had an opening and they were ready to move, and so he was supposed to call Stephen. When I spoke with Barry someday within the last 2 weeks, he was supposed to call Stephen Ball and try and coordinate time with Thrasher and Stephen to do the repair. And he had been sick, so that's why y'all were having difficulty reaching him. But he acted like they had openings and were ready to move. So you found out otherwise.
That was not quite the information that I had received prior to coming here this evening.
Okay.
The notes that Stephen gave me reflect that they were trying to get a piece of equipment to either to acquire it or to make it available in order to proceed with the work here.
Okay.
That was the information that we had gotten. Stephen had, I believe, spoken with them either Friday or today, and that's the latest information that we have.
So progress.
We think it's progress, but we're not sure.
So we have to make a motion to continue this for next month, or is it just going to roll
Yes.
on?
Motion to
Mo-
continue it, please.
Motion to continue to next month, the Stillwell guardrail repair. Motion made. Okay with that? All in favor, say aye.
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 Now we have
gotta do the
8991.
991 strike lane status and clear, what's going on there?
Jim had some questions and concerns and wanted that brought up at this meeting.
That was the 16 acres at the
acres.
end of the subdivision. From my understanding, from what I heard from your office, or Bill's office, was that they had not been compliant with getting permits and permission, and from Mr. Pringle that they had not completed their paperwork with us and got board approval to be doing any construction work or work on our easements and right-of-ways. They, last week, pushed a piece of conduit pipe down under the ground on our right-of-way, and so I guess we need to address that in some fashion, as to put a stop work order, send them a notice, whatever, telling them they're not authorized to do any work on our easements or right-of-ways.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. My recollection is that there was discussion by the board and a request by the landowner to be provided with I believe it was a non-exclusive 5-foot wide utility, underground utility easement along the edge of the district's 60-foot wide right-of-way easement. And my recollection is the board said, yes, conceptually we will approve that, but plans and permits, plans need to be submitted to the district's engineer for final approval. And so the paperwork to give, this is what Supervisor Bradford was referring to, the document to give the landowner the authority to have a non-exclusive utility, underground utility easement in your easement has not been completed. I haven't done that because they haven't gotten approval yet from the district's engineer of their plan for the use of the district's right-of-way. And we've talked a lot about the fact that any use of the district's right-of-way needs to be approved by the district before it can occur. And so we are still in the process. We're still waiting. And the last document I saw was a copy of an email from the engineer to the property owner indicating that there were still submittals that were required before the engineer could approve the plans and submittals. That's my recollection. So we're still waiting for them is the bottom line. We have not approved anything.
I would like to just bring this forward at this point, that I believe that this particular 16 acres was excluded from our subdivision some years earlier. They pay no taxes, this subdivision has no benefit whatsoever. They've, by giving them permission to use our easements, our right-of-ways, or any other authority that we might give them, I would personally vote against it as a board member until such time as they get back on our tax rolls and they start contributing to this community parts of that 16 acres that they hold there. Everybody else in this community contributes. They drive on our roadways to get here, roads that everybody else out here paid for, and they pay nothing. And the dump trucks and the equipment that they're going to bring onto that property in the year to come or years to come are going to be destructive to the roads, and we're going to pay that bill that they're paying nothing of. So if we have the right not to proceed and not to allow them to have anything put on our right-of-ways until such time as they start paying taxes here and contribute to the community, as a board member, I would vote no. So just to let you know that.
So are they don't work out there?
Oh. Are they doing work? last week I stopped them, they were pushing some conduit down under the ground. I talked to Stephen Ball, who brought it to my attention that the only thing that he thought at the time they were in violation of was the 48-hour notification. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense just for a 48-hour verbal notification to stop the work project, so I told them to do what they were supposed to do and I drove away. But the bottom line was I found out later that they didn't have the final approvals nor the authorization to do that. So that's the way it stands right now today.
Is there anything we have to do with code enforcement or anything? We're good? Was filing anything for that?
Do they have a permit box
I-
up there?
They do.
So wouldn't the approval, if the engineer gave you approval, that permit would be in the permit box?
Well, the engineer never did approve anything
No,
yet, but yeah.
In theory, it would.
Yes.
Yes.
It should be, yes, sir, as well as the recorded document that would grant the use, the non-exclusive use of the 5-foot wide strip along the edge of the district's right-of-way would also be recorded. But that's not been recorded yet because I've been waiting for them, the owner, to submit the last submittals to the engineer of the district so the district's engineer could give the approval to move ahead.
Okay, so,
It's my understanding none of that has happened.
okay. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, we just ignore this line item, we gotta get rid of it? Just, yeah. Why is this
Well,
on here? What action do we have to take?
I think, if I understood correctly, it was placed so that there could be further discussion. It says status and clarification of the district right-of-way. I'm going to guess that was so that I could say, so that I could discuss the fact that no approval has been granted for the use of the 5-foot wide strip. No final approval has been granted because they haven't submitted the plans. The preliminary approval was given. You said, subject to giving plans to the district, then we'll eventually approve the use of, non-exclusive use of the 5-foot wide strip. I think it's on the east side, I believe, of the right-of-way. But so far, they've not finished the submittal process to the district engineer, and so the final approval by the board has not occurred. My intention was to bring back the document to you that was the final approval for the use of the 5-foot wide strip for the board's approval once all the submittals are made to the district engineer and the district engineer signs off on it.
If I may add to that, it has been my experience working with FP&L over a long period of time that in spite of the fact that the conduit may be installed and the other infrastructure to support a electrical line may be in place, FPL will not energize the line until they have a signed easement from St. Carlos Estates.
Okay. So we got protection that way at least. Yeah. So do we have to do any action on this tonight?
Also, in addition, if you, the board, want to send something to the landowner's attorney, I heard something about a notice or something of that effect, then the board can give that direction, I guess. If there's action to be taken, it could be for the board to direct either the district engineer or me, one of the two, the district engineer to the owner's representative or me to the lawyer of the owner to say, you need to stop and finish the approval process of the district before you continue to use the district's right-of-way. You don't have permission to use the district's right-of-way yet.
I don't think we ought to even do that. I think we should rescind any decision we make on his use of that right-of-way until such time as he becomes a taxpayer of our community and starts contributing.
Which might be a problem because there was a lawsuit and then a final judgment entered in that lawsuit, and I don't remember the terms of that final judgment. It was entered before I became counsel for the district. So to that point, I would say that before that letter is sent, I should look at the final judgment in that lawsuit to determine whether whether the district has the ability to take that position. You may or you may not, or it may be that there is some other method or some other position the district can take. I would need to see the final judgment, the language of the final judgment in that lawsuit. I remember being told that a prior owner of that parcel brought action against the district to be excluded from the district and from the district assessments, and a final judgment was entered in favor of the owner. I don't know what the final judgment says.
I wasn't on the board back then. I don't think any of the rest of us were, but I would say this, that if he's allowed to do that, then everybody out here that didn't want to be part of the road project and stuff, I guess they could have jumped on his coattails and been part of that same lawsuit, and we would have had a very spotty road out here.
It was before the bond validation. I think what the event that changed that occurred after that litigation, after that final judgment was entered for that property owner, and now is that there have been the two bond validation actions and final judgments entered, which said that everything, I haven't checked the legal description, but I'm pretty sure this is correct. I believe the bond validation final judgments to say that all of the land area in the boundaries of the original 1969 judicial decree, the district has determined in the 1969 judicial decree, are subject to the bonds and the assessments to pay off the bonds, except for that parcel. I'm not sure, but I think that's the way that it reads. But
I understand what you're saying right now. I'm just saying that earlier on, had other people jumped on his coattails, it would have been a very spotty road project.
Yes.
And because he said president, it could have probably been done.
Could have been different.
I think I would like the attorney to look into the options that we have as to allowing him to proceed forward with anything on our easements and right-of-ways and roadways that cross through his property. It appears to me at the time that he's also dissolved or removed any significant sign except for the arch in his fence that he has also put onto our property. And he got that with board approval. So I'm not questioning that. What I'm saying is that when he did that, he provided an opening for service trucks and things to get through, but there's no sign of that between Strike Lane and his gate. He's planted grass, he's put a cable up so you can't get across there, and that's a questionable thing that I would have in the procedure moving forward.
Any motion to have you look into that, or just to go board direction?
I would say so. The board action to this point has been to initially authorize the use of the 5-foot strip of the district's right-of-way, and to authorize the engineer, the district's engineer, to review whatever submittals are given for the underground utilities. If you want to change that status of that approval, or that preliminary approval, then I would say now is the time to change that status, number one. Point number two is, if you want me to take a look at the final judgment that was entered before and try to determine for you and give you an opinion as to your ability to impose an assessment in some form on the property, that's a separate item. That I can do without
Look into the options, what we can do.
without official action. But if you're going to stop that process of approval of the
It's been
underground
months.
facility,
There's no time
then
limit on
you're
that?
going to need to take action to do that.
Okay.
And what you said before was you approved the underground utility usage 5 foot wide. My recollection is it was a 5 foot wide strip, subject to the engineer's approval of the installation that was occurring. And so, if you're going to change that direction, then
There's been no action on it, so yeah, I mean, it never got with the engineer, so you just can't let it go forever.
at some point you can say, you can take other action, but that's got to be at the board level. If you're going to say, stop, don't do it, we're not going to allow you to do it anymore, you're going to have to do something different, or to say you've got 30 days to submit all the paperwork that is required so that the engineer can review it all and approve it all, or whatever. If you're going to change anything any action that you previously took on this item, it needs to occur here at the board.
What are your thoughts on it? That's been like 6 months, and he hasn't done anything, we're just letting it
I
sit.
guess that's, we have discussion, that's part of this process.
Yeah.
So, give me your opinion of it, I gave you mine.
I'm with you. I don't know. I think cut it off. I don't know how long we can wait for this, and like you said, it's no benefit to anybody here.
What's the bottom line, though, if the property owner just ignores whatever the district is sending and telling them and doesn't do anything and continues on with what they're doing? What's the bottom line? What power does the district really have, and what can the ultimate outcome be?
I believe we can actually physically go in and remove it, bill the landowner, and then lien the property. Correct, Mr. Pringle? Mr. Morris? Is that the way of?
That's a legal question.
Okay.
If it's not approved, he's not officially doing it.
Yeah, so
you can do assist and desist. You can tell him stop because you're not approved. And if he doesn't, you remove it.
Please, Mr. Pringle.
Yes, sir.
And then
Go ahead. So that's why I've said once, twice, 3 or 4 times, if you're going to change the approval that you previously granted, the board needs to do it. You need to do it at the board level.
Yeah.
And once you take that action, then that is described to the property owner, from me to the property owner's lawyer, saying, you know what, you took too long, the approval has been withdrawn to use a part of the district's right of way. And that stops the process. Until he says no, and ultimately you may end up in court fighting over whether he does or does not have, whether the owner does or does not have the authority to use any part of the right-of-way for the underground utilities.
He has a question.
Okay, so a few years ago, before I moved here, some of my rich friends was gonna buy that property, but they said the reason they didn't purchase that property because they were developers. They wanted to build like 20 houses there. They said the reason they didn't do it was because they would have to pay this district a few more hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, whatever it was, to actually use the easement. So somehow this guy got the property. Believe me, I don't have no fight in this game. He got the property, but he's able to use the easement without paying the water.
Anything.
How's that?
Yep.
That's just what I'm saying. I'm just telling you what I heard.
I don't know this.
Well, actually, my understanding was exactly what you said. Other contractors and other developers had looked at that piece of property, and I had talked to the previous owner, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but Willard, and he had told me personally that the deals fell through because the requirements from the city of Bonita Springs and putting in the utilities and putting in the roads and putting in this. There was no land left by the time they got done to build a project. So he ended up selling the property for about half of what he had originally asked for it to a supposed to be a single family house.
And that is my recollection also, as one of the criteria or the conditions was that it was the approval that was given by the board was for the utilities to serve a single family residence, one single family residence, not an entire development. I think that is the distinction. That is what the owner said was the basis for the use. At this point, because nothing has been recorded granting any authorizations, it's still to be finally, ultimately determined by the board as to what authority you are going to give. And at this point, it has been for, again, my recollection is the authority for the underground utility was in a very defined area, the 5-foot wide strip, and only for a single family residence use, not for a development.
And if that included a large barn out back for heavy equipment, would that be part of a single family?
That could be a part of a single family use. A commercial operation would not be a single family use.
I think whatever we do, it would behove the board to have an understanding as to what the use is before we move forward with allowing any use of that.
And that would be defined in that document that I'm talking about that would be recorded.
Okay.
Which has not yet been recorded.
Mr. Grego, can I make a suggestion? If you do grant him the use of the easement, basically an easement within an easement, you put language in there saying, if it's a single family home, based on the impervious coverage and use of what you're having there, that's what we assess you on that amount for the use of that right of easement. And in the easement, you say if you ever subdivide or sell this other land in here, you lose that right of easement. And it has to be stated in the record so that that deed has that restriction on the use of that easement so that they don't turn around and try to subdivide or sell off the rest of the land.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I may, absolutely. There would be an automatic termination clause, and we've done that once, maybe twice that I recall, times where the district may have modified the authorization of property owners to put a fence up. I think I remember one case where there was an authority to put a fence up in the district's right of way, but there was language in there that said that the district, in fact, I think the language was actually a little broader in that case, and it said the district in the district's sole discretion could cancel the right at any time in the future based upon the needs and the best interest of the district. So yes, sir, that kind of language does need to be included, and that's part of the reason that I say until that document is finalized and recorded, there's not an official, an enforceable right to use the part of the right of way.
So what action would you need from us to stop it, or to alter it, or to put a time limit on it?
Rescind it.
Rescind it, yes.
There's a word to rescind it, to give a time limit. There's another option is to give a time limit and say
At least to present what they have. And
it has to be finished within a certain time period.
Yeah.
To say to them that the final approval has not been granted and it's still conditioned upon them completing the requirements, which they haven't done to this point, and they've got X number of days to make the final submittal to the engineer, or else the authority is rescinded and they have no right to use the right of way at all. Those kind of phrases can all be part of your direction. You tell me what you want me to say and I'll say it.
Question?
I think it should be rescinded because if we're not going to benefit from his using it, it should be renegotiated that he has to pay an easement or some sort of salary to us if he's going to be using that road. Otherwise, he gets no easement.
I agree with that.
Jennifer?
I do.
So in other words, we should rescind it immediately and renegotiate.
Mr. Pringle, can I make a motion?
Can you bring him to one of these meetings?
He showed up at a meeting with his lawyer at the very beginning, and then,
Does it?
yeah, we never see him again, so.
I feel the fact that he's proceeding farther than he should be, we should just stop him.
That's, yeah.
Let's do it.
I don't know if he's building like a $3 million house. I mean, you know, I'm down for it.
So what are the deficiencies in the documents he's provided? What are the deficiencies in the documents he's provided?
Yeah, those lights are insane.
Yeah.
He's
Come in and
provided
they really
some-
blind.
There's some absolutely
Top
detail.
golf. They
Yeah.
were
No
forced
detail.
to change all their lighting because of Interstate 75.
That's,
Like that.
Make a
Well,
motion.
let's concentrate on what we're doing
yeah,
here.
I need to get some verbiage from you though. I'd like to make a motion to stop it immediately, renegotiate, whatever we gotta do.
What if you stop him and then he takes you to court? What happens then?
Pringle?
Go to court.
We just drag it out.
We can block his access. I mean,
No, so that's why I mentioned earlier, ultimately, that is the final step, is litigation.
Yeah.
And-
Their job's to
and that
postpone until he gets old times.
Oh, stop.
Why don't you just give him a certain amount of time to get to where you want him to be? And then if he doesn't comply with that, then
Yeah.
But the thing is, right now, if he complies, we get nothing. Because there's no contract in place for him to
well, he has to
give us anything.
But the original thing is that they want to get the appropriate permits to get it done.
But that still gives us nothing.
Yeah.
Even if he gets the permit,
He's
you're going to destroy our roads that
He's
we're
using
paying
your
for
property,
for
he's
free.
using your property,
I understand.
okay?
Yeah.
And giving you nothing back for it. He pays no taxes on
I
it.
understand that, but the chance of him taking us to court and losing and spending our tax dollars and still using the property and destroying it is
Well, then this board has no power whatsoever if we're gonna go on that for every single thing that we have a problem with.
no. I just think that if you
And he's
give
literally
him,
had like 6 months, I believe. It's been a while.
It's been 8
But
months.
8 months?
legal
Yeah, it's been a
question.
long time.
But did
Who
you,
owns the right of way? The district.
The district.
He's asking for basically a sub easement in our easement.
Correct.
So legally, we have the standing, correct?
Exactly.
Right.
but and I'll defer to you
But-
because he's the attorney. But what I'm saying is that you've given him
Right.
a verbal approval, right?
That's the difference.
With no
It's
with
conditional verbal.
conditional, but
Yes.
is the condition, are the conditions open-ended where he has an infinite amount of time? Or can you now go back and say, in order to close this loophole and get him to stop, say, give him 2 weeks to comply where I don't know if he could actually physically do it, and then he's out of compliance, and then you never approve it again. That way you don't go to court and you say, you're not getting your
Still
easement,
take it.
it's not happening.
Yeah, you
But he can
always
still
sue.
take it in court.
Building a $6 million house.
He can still take it
So-
in court to try and get easement.
So this, just jumping if I may, please. I thought we were not gonna have a June meeting, and then we had a June meeting to do an engineer selection, and here we are. Quite all right.
Mine will be quick. Mine.
My thought is this, the point that is made,
Mark,
that Mark is making is that, if I may I'll try to restate it, is that because the board has given conditional approval before, and I don't recall a time frame stated in the conditional approval to make the submittals. Mark's point, I believe, and I tend to agree with him, is if you want to make the best legal position, defensible position possible in the future, the thing to do would be to say, we gave you this conditional approval, you had to make a submittal, you haven't, our engineer has said you haven't, the board is tired of waiting, you've got 2 weeks to submit everything that is being requested by the engineer, that the engineer's already told you you need to submit. No detail at all, right, in any of the drawings that have been submitted, is my understanding. And if you don't do that within that 2-week window, then the conditional approval that was granted before is revoked automatically. And then you don't have to wait until the next board meeting. You just pick a time frame that says, here's the beginning, here's the end of the time frame. You've had more than enough time to submit everything that needs to be submitted. You got 2 weeks more. We're being very gracious, and then it's automatically rescinded. That may be an option as well.
What do you think, Jennifer? You think give them the 2 week notice?
I think so.
Give them a week notice, 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? I'm with it.
48 hours.
It's July 4th weekend. No engineers.
Do the 1 week.
Sorry.
Tomorrow.
Do the 1 week.
Let's do it 1 week? All right. That's what I was kind of.
Yeah, do
Whatever.
It would be busy.
Mr. Brinkman, we can make a motion for a 1 week time deadline from when you send the paperwork.
Yes,
Letter
sir.
to him. To rescind it,
And it
if
would-
nothing's done to the engineer in full by then.
Right. It's the final documentation to complete the request as requested by the district engineer.
Motion made.
Okay.
Second.
Second?
I'm negative on that based on the fact that I don't believe that he should have been given to begin with, yet I was on the board at the time and I did vote in favor of it at that time, not realizing what was actually going on, so I'm a no vote on that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Pass 2-0, 2 to 1.
2.0.
Right now, my manager selection, secretary.
I'd like to bring something to point there.
Please.
You got your easement here. You're asking, I'm sorry I didn't bring this up before you made your motion pass. But you have an easement there, and there is paperwork there that Florida Power and Light has the use of the easements in San Carlos Estates to provide power to a customer. I worked for Florida Power and Light 37 years. And you got an easement, there may be something recorded there that he can come back and fight you. Right there, because that's what they're doing. They're putting an underground piece of conduit in there so he can have primary power going underground to his residence for a transformer.
He does have a choice.
He can go overhead. He can go overhead, but there's still that easement there. He has to have an easement to go on the overhead. And so the underground is within the same easement.
But there's
And
separate
so
easements.
you might get bit in that way right there, because they've already put the conduit in. It's already there. You might come back and say, I don't need a permit. You really spend a lot of time on some of this.
Doesn't the utility company have their own easement out here that is so totally different from the right of way for the water district?
Yeah, I have to give
Because we have
it's
electric easement
designed-
to our property, but it's not on the right of way.
That's right.
It's a totally different easement.
You have
She's
to
right.
say-
You have a primary easement coming in there, overhead primary coming in. There's gonna be easement recorded. And so there was a blanket easement for that.
Hey, Jerry, the power poles go by the front of his property.
That's right.
At any place there, they can come off them and go to wherever they want to go onto his property without going over our right of way.
He could put a tree up in his building and that's his power.
So, they don't have to, it's not like they have to be on our property. It's a choice they're trying to make.
If it is secondary cable, yes. If it's primary cable and it's going underground, he has to give them an easement for his cable going in. But you also have to have an easement from the pole in.
Yeah, but if there's a pole located at the other corner of his property, why is it they
Is
can't
it
go
in
on?
the easement?
No.
It's in the
The pole
utility
is set
easement.
in the easement. So if it's
Not
a
in the right
5-foot
of way.
difference there, that easement that you're talking about, that you're not giving him permission for,
What he's trying to do is run the length of our road, not the total length of it, but 5 feet in on it, down 50, 100
canal?
feet down the canal road to be able to then come over to his house. Whereas The other pole is at the other corner of his property, whereas he could go underground there and go the same thing he's trying to accomplish by going on our easement.
He's going down the canal easement.
Yeah,
That's
he's
what
going,
it is,
he's
yes.
doing it for decoration.
Have to see if
He didn't want to see the poles, he wanted to know around. It's a
And the
decorative,
thing is, it's
right?
just been on the agenda for so long, it's like, what are we doing here? I mean,
And I don't believe FPL has an easement in the district's right of way.
over there.
I believe if my memory is correct, there are power line easements along inside the parcels, outside the right of way, inside the parcel boundaries that run along parallel and along the right of way, but not in the right of way. And it's frankly been a point of contention with FPL because they place power poles in the right of way in the bottom of the swale ditch and change the drainage, which they should not do. The power pole should be on the property owner's side of the boundary line, and they're not doing that. So that's what I have determined so far. If Florida Power and Light can provide me with a recorded easement that they have within the right-of-way, then that does change things. And so far, in all of my conversations with FPL and their legal department, they have not provided that to me yet.
All right, let's move on here. The secretary, treasurer, and manager selection. We're still working on candidates, is it?
Mhm.
We're gonna move that to
Move it to the August 16th
August, okay.
because
So-
Mr. Pringle needs to.
There's not enough time.
Okay. Motion made to move the manager selection, secretary, treasurer selection to the August 16th.
Yes.
That gives him enough time.
The bottom line is, this meeting is June the 27th. Your July meeting is July the 19th, I think, or the 19th, maybe. And that's just not enough time to do the document, release the document, and give anybody a reasonable amount of time to respond. I mean, we cut it real tight with what we just did for the engineer selection, and it was longer than that. So that's why I asked.
Yes.
I made the request to roll this over to the August meeting so that we would have sufficient time to do documentation.
So motion made.
Second.
Yes, aye.
All in favor? All discussion? We're good. All in favor? Aye.
There you go. Got it.
All right.
You'll get it.
Yeah. All right, now, motion made to approve the May 17th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I make the motion.
Second?
Discussion.
Discussion, you good?
Yep. Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the May 22nd, or May 2022 bank
2022.
statements, financial reports, June 2022 bills, and financial reports. Motion made.
I'll second it.
You good?
Yes.
And all in favor? Say
Discussion.
aye.
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 All right. Supervisor discussion, is there anything else left?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. And I'm really sorry the room is emptied out the way it has, because there's been a lot of people out cleaning up Strike Lane and doing some other things during the recent storms, and I just wanted to personally thank them from the board, as all the board members do. I know, appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, in case you don't know it, and I thought everybody here should have known it, that there is a sewer line that runs down Strike Lane from out east of I-75 over to behind Walgreens. That blew out a few weeks ago, and about 200 feet inside from the railroad track in the swamp area, and it was blowing up into the sky. David and myself were down there, and personally we got some of the mist on us, not knowing it was a sewer line. I called up the Bonita Water Company. They came out, they immediately shut it down, they capped it. Then they spent the next few days and week putting in new pumps all along Strike Lane and putting new boxes up. So where you see those green boxes in people's front yards and on the edge of our right-of-ways, Those are sewer pipes, not water pipes, not gas lines, not anything else. They're sewer. And seeing as how we don't have sewer out here, I just thought y'all, in case one blows out, you might want to know not to be in it.
Since we're on that discussion, we all love talking sewers. As you all know, the state of Florida is and especially Lee County is going after septic tanks with a vengeance.
Sure.
We are unique in that we own our roads, so we have a little bit of protection, but I think we need to keep on top of the city council when they discuss these things.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I've also lived in other private subdivisions out towards Sanibel and other areas where the county came along, even with large acreage lots, and said, guess what you're getting? Island property out near Sanibel today that does not have any city water, but we do have a sewer pipe. So it's very unfortunate that they make their choices the way they do and not everything at the same time. But I agree with you and thank you for that. But we need to, as we go down the road looking at replacing our roads or repaving our roads, before that occurs, we need to be in compliance and make sure we know what the county's doing shortly after that to make sure we don't put down new roads and have them come tear them up and put down sewer pipes.
My understanding, if they do that, is they have to take over our roads.
Right.
And
Well,
build them up to their standards.
With that being said, I own property out in Cottage Point subdivision out off John Morris Road, and to this day they're still private roads and they do have sewers. And the county did exactly that to us. We had paid to pave our roads. 2 years later, the county came in and tore them up and put down sewers. So, yeah, did they have to fix the roads? They did that, but they still are private roads and we still pay to maintain them today. And that was some 30 years ago.
So it's will eventually come.
It's gonna,
Oh,
yeah,
is what
it's
you're
gonna
saying.
come.
As the population grows out here, it's going to come. They're going to force us to do it, and they will do it through the testing systems of the water management district and the monitors that we have. Bill's fully aware of that. And as soon as they start finding enough fecal matter, and that's another reason why we have a bunch of pipes dumping into our system. And I don't know how many of you people are aware of that, but it comes under, I keep calling it Livingston out to the east of us, but out by I-75. There's a bridge there, and that water all comes from underneath the bridge and dumps, you can see the way it flows, into our subdivision. Then we have the brooks to the north of us, which they do pay us some money for being paying to use this. They're the only people that do. Then we come around the corner by railroad track, and that goes along that 16 acres of property that we don't get any tax dollars for. I agree with you, except the runoff from the railroad track and the other things all go into there. Then you move north, and the cement plant has a big culvert pipe coming from their pond right into our system. And then as you move around to the Mariah Lane Road, we have the swamps in those areas, and we have subdivisions over there that contribute coming into that southern side canal. If you go over to the Stillwell Canal, we have 4 pipes coming from over the golf course area dumping into the Stillwell Canal side. And then that area continues out to I-75 again. So we have a lot of other areas that are not paying for dumping their water through our system or helping to maintain it.
Say something about science here too.
The permitting on the signs, yeah.
No, it was just, yeah, there's an area on here about the signs. The signs for the water management district that we posted are, I checked with the sign department, and they approved the signs to be put up. We do not have to get permits for those. We're a government agency, and we're putting them on our property. So they're not required to have a permit for them. The person over there gave me his name and phone number and everything in case there was any questions about that.
Sorry. Okay, that just brought up another thought. I think it's our no outlet sign when you first come in that's faded beyond belief. I think it's that one. I'm not sure. We can check on that.
To replace it.
Yeah.
We've put some money in the budget for the upcoming year to start replacing some of those signs.
Got it. Thank you.
So
Okay.
There was a bunch of them actually. We had.
We put
flashing lights on the one at Catskill that stops on.
And Stillwell.
I've been noticing a lot more enforcement out here lately. Just on the way here, there was a cop that's one pulled over.
They're actually blue and red, if you didn't recognize them.
Anything else?
I'm good.
You guys are good? Everyone's happy? Mr. Pringle? You good? All right. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you for your
Right around the corner, to the right.
I'll be back to sign checks.
Let me get back to you.
Yeah, I have to think about the question.
Sullivan. They're all gonna go. You all right?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking, I had a question I wanted to ask Richard, but it slipped my brain during the conversation they were having. Yes, sir? Have you guys signed checks?
They're sitting over there.
Yeah, I have checks, but I need signatures.
Signatures.
Are you wait for it?
It's gonna take a while.
No, it shouldn't take very long. Jennifer, why don't you sign? Go sign
to the
it.
bathroom really quick.
Okay. It may take longer.
I don't know.
Oh.